Hashi Square Lalo family.
Hashi Square Lalo.
And for those folks that don't know what that means hello in Tut. If you're not familiar with the Tut language, the people who were enslaved in this country at one point created a language out of the English language. It was codified. And here we go. It's called Tut. And it looks like it's made its resurgence. What, isn't that about right, Kim? Within the past couple months, a year-ish? Something like
Yeah,
that?
I mean, it just really made its resurgence with TikTok. A few TikTokers put it out there, and everybody, trying to find as much information as they can about it. There's not a lot out there, of course, but we'll do our best to revive the native tongue.
Most definitely. So we have the gangs all back. We have CO in the building.
It was good, fam. I missed y'all. Happy to be back.
Same here. Welcome back. And
welcome back.
And Chris, if you can join back, family. Okay, I think he's back. Let's see if we can get Chris back. Can we get Chris back?
Chris back.
Is Chris back?
Oh, yeah. Here I am.
All right. The gang is all here.
Back.
The band is back.
Back and better than ever.
All right. Well, we've got a jam-packed show.
Don't be crazy fire as usual. Crazy fire.
So we will start with finding out what's going on in the news this week. Bank robbers strap hostages to getaway cars in deadly raid. Sao Paulo, heavily armed gangsters strapped hostages to their getaway cars after robbing 2 banks in Brazil in a rampage that left 3 people dead, police and reports said Monday. Using explosive drones and heavy weapons, the assailants took over downtown streets in the southeastern city of Aracatuba, home to 200,000 people. After robbing 2 banks, they made their escape by strapping hostages to the roof and hoods of moving cars, according to shocking images broadcast on local news channels and shared widely on social media. 2 civilians and 1 bank robbers were killed during the assault, which left at least 6 injured, according to the police. The assailants placed explosive in different parts of the city and surrounded some police stations to delay the arrival of reinforcements.
Man, I was actually gonna take a vacation to Brazil, but I
might want to put that on hold.
Might get caught up in a robbery and end up on a car traveling 100 miles down the freeway, strapped on. It's kind of jacked up.
Wild.
So let's see what's going on in Afghanistan from Ms. Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary. Let's see what's going on, fam.
A few others on the ongoing evacuation, with the caveat that things are changing, winding down, numbers as they get reported here versus situations on the ground.
Sure.
We heard through the weekend of Americans who were told to get to the airport and then unable to do so because of the danger on the ground. If for some reason, and we don't have a specific example just yet, but there very well may be, depending on when the final flights out are, what would be your message to those Americans who may be left behind who were trying to get out?
Well, as you noted, and I appreciate the caveat, we are continuing, we remain in touch with American citizens, as I noted at the top, to Darlene's question, and we are continuing to work to evacuate American citizens. What our message directly would be is that our commitment is enduring, and our commitment does not waver, even as we bring our men and women from the military home. And let me just outline for you a couple of the steps that are ongoing that I expect we'll give you updates on as details are finalized. First, on the diplomatic front, the Secretary of State is going to be meeting with a number of his international partners. Just over the weekend, the State Department put out a letter from 100 countries making clear that there must be safe passage for citizens, for Afghans who want to leave after the 31st. On Friday, one of the Taliban leaders delivered public remarks conveying that individuals who wish to leave after the 31st would be able to do so. That does not mean we trust what they say, but there is an enormous amount of international leverage that we will continue to work in a coordinated way with our partners around the world. And there is also, of course, a discussion about what our diplomatic presence may look like moving forward. As our Secretary of State and our National Security Advisor confirmed yesterday, our current plan is not to have an ongoing presence in Afghanistan as of September 1st, but we will have means and mechanisms of having diplomats on the ground, being able to continue to process out those applicants and facilitate passage of other people who want to leave Afghanistan. We will have more details for that, I expect, in the coming days. And can I add one more piece that we're working on? The other piece of this is operational, which of course is the airport. And the airports, there are also regional airports. And we are currently working with a range of partners in the region about how to keep those up and operational. We need to reopen or figure out how to work with our partners to reopen the civilian airport and ensure that that is a mechanism. That is an area where there is mutual interest by the United States, by international organizations like the World Food Program who want to get assistance in, and by the Taliban to get these airports operational and running.
Peace in the Middle East. So, looks like in California, seems like it's been pretty consistent year by year when the summertime comes around. It's a blaze. Looks like, according to yesterday, the Dixie Fire is contained at 48%. The Caldor Fire, which I believe is closer or closest to Lake Tahoe area, is contained at 14%. And looks like there's two other fires, the Monument Fire and the French Fire, and one other fire, the Chaparral Fire. That's happening right now. And two others that aren't as large as the Dixie and Caldor, the Chaparral, which I already named, Arola, and Washington Fire.
Stay safe, California. And also, August is Black Philanthropy Month. Did anybody know that? All right. Well, Black Philanthropy Month, BPM, held every August, was created in 2011 by Dr. Jackie Bouvier Copeland and the Pan-African Women's Philanthropy Network as an annual celebration of African descent. Giving BPM culminates with a Giving Day on August 28th. Oh, we missed it this year. Next year though. Initiated by the Young Black and Giving Back Institute to promote financial support for Black-led and Black benefiting organizations. We are so grateful for donors like Shantia Coley. Shantia also serves on the board of directors for Goodwill. Her ongoing support helps people in our community access employment services and job training for in-demand skills free of charge. I will.
Go ahead.
I was going to read the little side, but we can move on. We really can. But make sure this is on the radar for next year.
Okay. All right. Well, speaking of Black philanthropy, shout out to SAC Black Biz and Chris Lodgen in the building. All right. So 1.1. Yeah. 1.1 million customers still without power in Louisiana. Shout out to Louisiana.
Prayers up.
Around 1.1 million customers in Louisiana are still out of power today. Governor John Bel Edwards said Monday evening. Electricity is practically non-existent for most people in southeast Louisiana. The governor said, adding that there are 25,000 linemen in the state working to restore power now. First of all, we really need our hospitals more than anything else to come back up so that people who are in ICU rooms and on ventilators and so forth can continue to receive the life-saving care that they need, Edwards said. That's important all the time. It's certainly important even more so because of the COVID situation. I have to keep reminding people that whether we like it or not, we're still in the COVID environment. It's a very difficult COVID environment where 100% of our cases today are attributable to the Delta, the governor said. According to the governor, 3 hospitals across the state have already been evacuated, with a 4th hospital, Terrebonne General Health System in Homa, in the process of being evacuated Monday evening.
Californians are returning their recall ballots. Here's who's voted so far. The recall election is barreling down California voters with less than 2 weeks to go until September 14th. Nearly 3.5 million mail ballots have been returned. Polls say Governor Gavin Newsom has a slim lead over those who want to remove him, but nothing is certain until all the votes are counted. Democratic ballots make up the majority of returns so far, according to ballot tracking from Political Data, Inc. As of Monday, 17% of mail ballots have been returned, according to PDI's tracker, with Democrats making up 54% of all returns, followed by Republicans with 24% and others with 22%. Older white people, those 65 and up, are also sending back ballots at a faster rate than their younger counterparts and voters of color. In the past, older conservative voters have made up the majority of mail-in ballots. That wasn't the case in 2020 election, when many states expanded voter by mail in light of coronavirus, and then President Donald Trump cast doubts on that process. That led many Republicans to vote on election day in person rather than trust the mail ballot system.
All right, you want to take that one?
I can. Biden under fire for using the word boy in introduction of Black senior advisor. Twitter users, including GOP national spokesperson and Republican congressional candidate, knocked President Joe Biden Monday after he used the word boy and fumbled in his introduction of a Black senior advisor. Biden held Monday a briefing on the government's recovery efforts after Hurricane Ida wrought havoc on Louisiana. At the outset of the briefing, Biden introduced White House senior advisor Cedric Richmond as a boy who knows Louisiana very, very well and New Orleans. His use of the term that is perceived to be derogatory towards Black people received criticism online. GOP national spokesperson Paris Denard, who is Black, pointed out that Richard is a 47-year-old man. Joe Biden just continues to insult Black men openly and in public because he doesn't care, Denard wrote. Laverne Spicer, a Florida congressional candidate, called Biden a rude, condescending racist, adding that Richmond is nobody's boy. All right, I guess that is in the news.
And we are back at you. So today, family, we are going to be talking about the recall, detractors, and advocates. Yes, the recall with Governor Gavin Newsom. So anyway, where should we get started here? There's a lot of stuff that's kind of going on. Let's play this 6-minute clip, and then maybe we'll give some commentary after the clip. So here we go.
So he's, from what you're telling me, a fairly popular Democratic governor in a state that is heavily Democratic. So what's the problem?
The problem is a little bit of a nuanced issue. There's a robust and significant strain of conservatism in California. You wouldn't think it, because only about a quarter of the votes are Republican. But almost from the moment that Gavin Newsom was elected, the conservatives in the state started this recall effort, mostly in rural California and in a few other sort of slightly redder parts of the state. And they had a number of general Republican complaints about Democratic policies.
The people voted for the death penalty to be maintained, and he came in and unilaterally overrode that.
They didn't like the governor's opposition to the death penalty.
The governor of the largest state in our country empowering these folks that are here unlawfully.
They didn't like his stance on immigration.
California has become unlivable, and the first order of business is removing a governor who is a political extremist.
But this recall was a long shot. It wasn't expected to go anywhere, and it would have stayed a long shot had it not been for the pandemic.
What do you mean?
When the pandemic started and it hit California, Governor Newsom was among the earliest and most aggressive proponents of following the science and shutting things down early.
We direct a statewide order for people to stay at home.
He acted on the advice of epidemiologists who were really urging the state to social distance and take precautions and not gather in large groups.
No gatherings of more than 3 households present, and those gatherings can be no longer than 2 hours.
And the governor began to really act to protect people in a much more aggressive way than many governors across the country.
We need to make tough decisions. We need to bend the curve in the state of California.
And initially, Californians were, kind of okay with it. They were sheltering at home, people were wearing masks. But then as time wore on, people began to get pandemic fatigue, and then 2 important things happened. On November 6th, a Superior Court judge in Sacramento gave the proponents of the recall an extra 4 months to continue to circulate petitions.
Why did they do that?
They argued that they hadn't really had the ability to gather the signatures they needed because the shutdown order that the governor had initiated had prevented them from going to supermarkets and malls and places like that where they could get people to sign on. And the folks behind the recall were frustrated. They couldn't get the signatures they just knew were out there among unsatisfied Californians that they were sure were as angry with the governor as they were.
So the judge essentially gave them an extension.
That's right. And on the same day that this extension is made final by this judge in Sacramento, the governor decides to go to a birthday party in the Napa Valley at the French Laundry restaurant, which is an extremely expensive, extremely exclusive, extremely fabulous restaurant that costs hundreds of dollars a plate for diners. So the governor goes to this birthday party with his wife and his friend who is a lobbyist, and they sit down in this room that's kind of an indoor-outdoor type room. It complies with state rules, but it's enclosed and you can see into it. And the governor and his friends are not wearing masks. And people notice and they talk, and some of them take pictures.
I remember when this happened, it was sort of all anyone could talk about. People did not see those pictures and go, wow, looks like a nice dinner. Glad he had a good time.
No, Californians were outraged.
At this time, he really needed to step up and be that example for us. I think it's highly hypocritical of him.
This was coming up into the holidays.
Is it setting a good example to do exactly what you're telling the rest of us not to do? No.
The governor had asked people to stay home and not gather.
Tonight, while Governor Newsom is telling all of us to have Thanksgiving dinner outside,
To not eat Thanksgiving dinner together if they could avoid it.
he's facing some new fallout for that fancy birthday dinner party he went to at the French Laundry.
It was just insult upon injury.
I made a mistake being with a few extra people beyond the guidelines that I've been promoting, which is outside the households. That was a mistake.
What did this dinner, this party at the French Laundry, what did it do to the recall movement?
Before the French Laundry incident, there were about 50,000 signatures on the petitions to recall the governor. A month later, there were more than 500,000.
Wow.
It supercharged the whole recall. The Republican National Committee was involved, the state Republican Party was involved, and money was starting to come in from Republicans around the United States.
All right, family. So I think that clip gave us a good overall summary.
Pretty much summed it up. He apologized for his mistake.
I mean, does anybody on the panel right now feel like the Republicans had it out for him, like right from the get-go?
I would say that's. Go ahead, Chris.
Nope, that was my answer.
I would say that's always an ongoing battle. Democrats always have it out for Republicans and vice versa. One bit that I would add to the storyline that y'all just played is that continuing into COVID with the shutting down of the businesses after like that event happened at the party. Fast forward a few months, there were a lot of business owners who started getting upset that California remained closed down. And so those folks started adding to the recall as well. So it kind of started as a pea snowball, or like a little snowball, and just like continued to gather more and more snow as it rolled down the hill. And so most folks who are elected into that seat have some sort of recall, but they don't have this many different groups banded together to actually make it real. So I think it's more than just the Republicans having it out, because there are Democrats who feel the same way.
You think it was just a perfect storm?
I think it was a perfect storm.
Yeah, I was going to add just real quick. I didn't mean to butt in. I was going to add that. Yeah, I think Theo was absolutely right. And the answer to the question, like I said, I think that's true. Yeah, the Republicans. I mean, it was clear. I mean, I was at a few Capitol events here in Sacramento before the recall. I mean, before the pandemic, and Republicans were out there, already then talking about recalling him, and they had, all kind of, demonstrations. But I think in the clip that you played, the speaker was right that the pandemic supercharged it and gave it life like it probably wouldn't have had. Who knows? And then like a couple of really bad self-inflicted wounds, I think too, by the governor. Like I think that French Laundry incident was a really bad self-inflicted wound, and I think he said that. But I do think, yeah. So like one thing I wanted to say too, and I want to make sure that I made this point while we were here is, so like look what happens when people get mad at their politicians, right? Like look what's possible, right? You should be looking at this right now and see that you can actually, if you don't like the government official, like you can actually try to get them out of their job before the election. Right? So I think especially for us Black folks, like we gotta take a look at like this for a second and see that this is an exercise of power. Like no matter what, whether it's successful or not, when it began, when it didn't begin, why it started, why it didn't start. No matter what, look at what is happening. Some people are so mad and got so mad at this person who was in office and didn't like what he was doing for whatever reason that they got enough signatures and they went through the process and built enough power to force an election early, right? Which we call a recall election. Basically, do you want to keep or remove somebody from office? So I did want to point that out too.
Can we recall Biden?
So
I'm
I don't know how
serious.
it works at the federal level, but I
Okay.
do know it works pretty well at the state level here. And like the clip said, there's a certain number of signatures that you actually have to go out and get, right? If you want to recall a governor or force some sort of special election to recall a politician at the local or state level, and so there's a whole process, right? But I'm not sure how it works at the federal level.
Yeah, maybe we should do a show on the impeachment process. What do you think?
I'd be down to do a show on the
It's a little bit
process.
different, but
Yeah, that's two-step though. You can get impeached and not be removed from office, and which is basically like
What just happened?
Yeah, it's like the Senate and everybody coming together, or House, and saying, "Hey, we don't like what you've done. We're gonna, do an investigation and say, hey, this is the results. We don't like what you've done. Shame on you." But if there's not the criminal side of it, which is really step two, and I believe that is through the Senate, then it's just a bunch of people in suits just saying what someone did that they don't like, specifically the president. Um, so it's a little, to Chris's point, it's a little different than the recall on the state level. I forget how many signatures we do actually have to have in order to make it real. I could probably look it up in a second. But I do know that this recall is costing us, meaning California taxpayers, upwards of $215 million. And that is after you get the signature. That's to pay for all of the paperwork that goes out that teaches people, like the sample ballots that we get, the real ballots, the folks who got to go and stand at the polls. It's to cover all of that. And to Chris's point, yeah, this is absolutely an exercise of power. Power that people, quote unquote, have to remove your governor. If they are not doing what they need to be doing, then yeah, you can go this route to have them removed.
Right. He's up for re-election in 2022 anyway. So, I mean, they could have just wrote it out. But like you said, this is an exercise in power and a waste of taxpayer, money during, tough economic times.
Well, before we actually get into the thick of things here, I wanted to put another question out here because we have a jam-packed show. But my question to the panel is, if Governor Gavin Newsom happens to get recalled, then what does that look like for California and in particular Black people?
It's a good question. I'm happy to lead off on this, even though I should probably wait to the end. come in. Let me say this quickly enough. So that depends. But to be honest with you, Black folks ain't doing so hot right now in California, right? So that depends on what we do, and that depends on who's in office, and that depends on what the Assembly and the Senate look like for California, which will probably also will almost certainly still be a democratically controlled, Senate and Assembly, for through the next year or two or so. So it depends, but for Black folks here right now, as we well know, we up here in Sacramento, right, and then COU down there in LA, like we know what it's like for Black folks in real life. So
yeah, I co-sign everything he just said. We're, to begin with, not in a good spot. And so regardless of whether Newsom or any of the other folks who are running, Cox or Elder or anyone else, is in place, it's still not necessarily going to be a great outlook for us, which means if you're about legislative work, it's time to keep getting busy and go harder. One thing I did want to say, I found the stats. There were 2.1 million signatures that was submitted in order to recall Newsom. After trying to verify them, 1.7 million were valid, but only 1.5 million were actually needed. So
Wow.
there are a
Wow.
lot of folks.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and I think they determine it by like a formula, right? Like there's some formula that they use to tell you how many signatures you need. I'm not sure if it's like a fixed thing every single time. I think it's based on like the population and stuff like that. I'm not sure, but we can definitely find out more about that. And yeah, CO is absolutely right.
All right, family. Well, let's start getting busy here. So let's see recall updates. The latest polls of the California recall election looks like to keep Gavin Newsom in office is 51%, and to remove him 45.4%. And shout out to my brother from another mother for referring the family to 538.com.
Yeah. thanks for pulling this up because it's important, and thanks for talking about it. So I wanted to talk about this too because one, what you're looking at, or what we're talking about is where the race is right now, where we what, or at least what the polls are saying about where the race is right now. And actually, one thing that struck me in the part where we did in the news was the part about how, what the ballots are that have came in already, right? Some 3 million ballots. I think I heard some 17% of all ballots have already. So some 17% of all mail-in votes. It sounded like have already been turned back in and actually sent in. And to hear that the Democrat votes, or excuse me, the Democrat ballots. We don't know what the votes are, but the Democrat ballots are leading in the early voting. To me, it actually raised a flag for me, and like it feels like that's a sign of weakness for the Republicans. To be honest with you, because I would expect more Democratic votes to come in at a faster rate the closer we get to the election. And so I think if I were, betting or, sort of working on the Republican side of this, I would probably want to do everything I could to make sure we get as much early votes as we could so that we don't get, or so that when we get, to election day, we're going to get, beat up by all these Democratic votes coming in, but it ain't as bad because we had so many early votes. So to see and hear that the Republicans are losing the early vote battle right now, 2 weeks out, is a sign for me of Republican weakness, or let's say no recall, or I don't want to use yes or no because those mean things for the recall. So the people who don't want Gavin Newsom to stay governor, it feels like they're losing right now just from the ballots that are coming in. If we make some assumptions, that all of the Democratic ballots are going to vote Democrat, which is not really an assumption that I think we can make with any real certainty. But yeah, we're looking at where the race is right now, and this is a poll average. So I want to be clear, right? These are poll averages. So these are averages of the polls that we have. So we take different polls, or not we, the folks at 538 who do this, take different polls and then they combine them in a way to give you, basically an idea of what many different polls are saying over time. And I'm not sure, I can't see the screen, but if the graphic is up, you should be able to see that the people who wanted to recall Gavin Newsom were really, really like gaining momentum and like growing over time. But at a certain point, they sort of peaked and sort of, hit a ceiling, and then they have been going down really ever since. And completely opposite, the folks who want to keep Gavin Newsom as governor, they really started this, up but then they started losing, and now it seems like they're starting to pull away again. So that's where we are. These are poll averages, so just keep that in mind. Also, these are polls are snapshots. You can't trust any poll blindly, and you can't trust any poll averages blindly, right? So keep that in mind too. But right now, it looks like if the election were held today and if these poll averages were right, then Gavin Newsom would stay governor.
But the In the News article also stated that the Republicans are mistrustful now of the mail-in vote process, and that they might, come out in droves day of to cast their vote based purely on that distrust of the mail-in ballot process.
Yeah, that's even a further reason not to lean heavily on what we're hearing about the numbers that are coming back from early voting. Just because one candidate is in the lead doesn't mean it's reflective of what the entirety of the folks who are voting are going to be. You're absolutely right. Republicans tend to come out and skip the early voting and vote in person. So we're gonna
I
have
think
to
it's
wait
going
till
to
the
be
end.
a photo finish.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk about a little recall history here. Just to note that there have been quite a few recall attempts here in California. 55 governor, 2 lieutenant governors, 7 attorney generals, 1 secretary of state, 1 state treasurer, 1 state controller, 2 insurance commissioners, 2 members of the Board of Equalization, 30 members of the state Senate, 50 members of the state assembly, 1 entire membership of the Supreme Court, and 27 Supreme Court individual justices.
Damn.
I know, right?
Well, the CEO mentioned that. She said that there's been several attempts, but they just don't gather the steam that this one did.
Yeah.
I mean, California is no joke. Like, if the people ain't feeling you, they go all in. Jeez. But let's look at some successful recall attempts. In 1913, Senator Marshall Black got replaced by Herbert C. Jones. In 1914, the year after that, Senator Edwin E. Grant, who is a Democrat, got replaced by a Republican, Edwin L. Wolf. In 1994, Assemblyman Paul Horscher, Republican, got replaced by another Republican, Gary Miller. 1995, Assemblywoman Doris Allen, a Republican, got replaced by Scott Bowe, Republican. 2003, this is probably the most known recall in California history, Governor Gray Davis got replaced by Arnold the Terminator Schwarzenegger himself. And now Governor Gray Davis was a Democrat, Arnold Schwarzenegger was a Republican. And in 2018, Senator Josh Newman, Democrat, got replaced by a Republican, Ling Chang. So it looks like the Republicans seem like they replaced a lot of the people that were getting recalled.
Yeah, it's a power grab. We can see the trend in that. So, and, even in this one, I've seen some comments like, oh man, California has figured out a way to get a Republican in there with just 20% of the vote. Says something about the way that the winner only needs 20%. Am I correct to be victorious in this, Chris?
I don't know if it's just 20%, but what they're saying is this, that so the recall ballot that us here in California get, they have two parts, right? The first part asks us, should Gavin Newsom lose his job, basically, right? Yes or no. So if you vote no, you're saying no, Gavin Newsom should not lose his job. He should keep his job as governor. Yes, you are saying yes, he should lose his job. He should not be the governor anymore. And so right there, Gavin Newsom needs 50% or more of the people to vote no, right? If he doesn't get that, right? So if less than 50% of the people vote no, then he loses his job, and then of the remaining votes, the person who got the most in that second part of the ballot, which asks you who should replace Gavin Newsom, that person becomes the governor, the person who got the most votes on that second part. So you can, what they're saying is you can become governor here with a very much smaller percent of the people than, you know, you would have to get in like next year, right? In the general election, when it's just you versus somebody else, right? And when it's not, you're getting basically all of the votes that are basically left. So that's what they're getting at. And I don't know if it's just 20% or if it's as low as 20%, but it's a lot lower number than you would need to actually have in like a normal general election like the one we're going to have in 2022. And by the way, Kim, you said it earlier, we're going to have to, you know, basically there's going to be this recall election, and then we're probably going to be right back into campaign mode, probably right after. I want to be, you know, hopeful here and say right after the holidays, but I can't promise you that there won't be campaigning starting literally like September 15th and people starting to run for governor in 2022. So like, I can't promise you that. I know there's going to be talk about that. So, but yeah.
Yeah, whoever wins, let's just say Newsom loses his job and is no longer the governor. Whoever does win will be in office for 2 years and will need to rerun during the next run. They only get to stay for the remainder of Newsom. They don't have it for the next 4 years, let's say.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I don't know if we want to go that route now, but you know, for some of the candidates that are on the recall ballot, I mean, it's kind of scary to think about it if they're in support of reparations or not, especially with the current task force. I don't know. Will that somehow impact the current reparations task force and the proposals that are given if, for example, one of the candidates that are running just isn't filling, you know, the reparations proposals right now, or what will be the reparations proposals?
Yeah.
I mean, the governor's going to have to sign off on any proposals.
Right.
So good question. Let me answer some of that. So, so one, there's always risk. There's always risk, right? So this is not a scenario where there's no risk of anything bad happening to either the California Reparations Task Force's work over the next year or two, and or the proposals that it creates at any point in time over the next year or two. So there is risk, right? But there's some other things to think about too. One, the law that created the California Reparations Task Force is a law. That means it is already like happening. It's already been signed by a governor. So, and the California Reparations Task Force has 2 years to do its work. So if you think about the timing, right? Right now there's this recall going on. We're gonna have a decision on who is our governor, you know, within the month, right? We're going forward. The California Reparations Task Force is just really getting its work started, right? So none of its work in terms of proposals could be affected right now because there are no proposals to be affected right now, right? Like proposals that are actually like already being presented because the task force is really just getting started. Right? So that's the first thing to think about. The other thing to think about is that yes, there will be proposals, but we also are going into another election next year, right? So we were just talking about that. So in the event that there is somebody who is not supportive or not friendly to any reparations efforts, then that is going to be another opportunity to challenge that person's position in the next year's election, right? So there is another opportunity, or there is an opportunity rather, to make some changes around that next year too. So just keep that in mind too. And then also keep in mind that I do want to be honest with folks. There is also risk that. So right now, the work of the California Reparations Task Force is done out of the Department of Justice, the California Department of Justice. That's where the task force's work is housed. And so that is a job, that is a place whose boss is the Attorney General. That Attorney General is picked by, that Attorney General, technically works with and for the people of the state, but also works with the governor's office too, right? So there could be some effect. I'm just saying this to be honest. There is a risk of there being some effect on the work that the California Department of Justice is doing with the California Reparations Task Force if there's somebody who's elected who's not friendly or supportive to reparations. So I'm just trying to be clear about some of the risks here. But I'm also wanted to be clear about the fact that one, the task force work is protected by law. The California Department of Justice has to support the task force by law. That's in the law. And so anything that goes against that would be technically illegal, right? Even if the governor tries to do it, it will be technically illegal. So there is protection for the task force's work. There is protection for the work, not just through the next month, but also through next year, really through 2023. And remember, we also have another fight ahead of us, right? Starting at the latest in 2023, and that is to actually get the proposals actually into law. And so that process is going to have its own timeline, right? That could be another year or two. By that time, there could be another governor election happening, right? So the next election is 2022. Then 2026 is going to be the next one. We could be, I imagine that we will be fighting on proposals, hopefully having gotten some already done, but still fighting on some proposals. I could see us still fighting on some proposals even through the next governor election, not the 2022, but the 2026. So, or when we start campaigning in 2025. So, to keep all that in mind, I do want to just present some assurance to you, but I also want to present just be real that there are some risks.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, Chris, I don't know if maybe we can just briefly touch on these points just real quick. And I don't know if you want to elaborate on it, but there's a couple of recall points that maybe we might want to discuss just real briefly. That there's a recall election for.
Are you talking about from the voter guys?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Are you talking about from the voter guide?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So let's let folks know. One, CJC has so the Coalition for Just and Equitable California, CJC on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Just a shameless plug. Has a 2021 recall election Black voter guide out right now. We don't have to go through all the points. We can definitely direct folks to where to find the link. And or drop it in the chat too, so folks can have it. We don't have to go through all of them. But there are some in there that we do want to highlight, right? Just so Black folks know, the way to think about what they see on their ballots, or if they have any questions about anything around the recall. I think one thing we want to point out is what a yes vote means and what a no vote means. And I just sort of said that a few minutes ago, but be clear, right? Your first question when you get your ballot in the mail, if you get a ballot in the mail, which you should, if you have a physical address in California, and we know a lot of our folks don't, right? And we know a lot of our folks are unhoused, right? But for those of us who are fortunate enough to have shelter, when we get our ballot in the mail, if you don't have it ready, you absolutely should. So when you see it, right, it'll ask you the first part, basically, should Gavin Newsom lose his job? Should the governor be recalled? Yes, he should means yes, he should. No, he should not means no, he should not. So yes means the governor should lose his job. No means the governor should not lose his job. So I think that's one point that we want to make real clear.
Okay. I don't know. Chris, can you see the next slide or no?
I can't see any slides right now.
Can't see any slides? Okay. So, let's see.
Okay, I can see them now.
You can see it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yes, I can see it now. So let me. Right. So that's the one to highlight right there. Number 8. That's the one to highlight. And for the rest of these, please do check out the voter guide itself. Right. Again, we have a link to the voter guide. We have a voter guide for you right now. If you want to check it out, if you're on social media, CJEC on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, you can find them there. Twitter is probably the fastest way to find it. I'm sure we'll get it up on the website at some point too. But definitely that number 8 is important right there. Now, keep in mind too, even if you vote no on the first part, saying you want to keep the governor and you're saying no, the governor should not lose his job, you do have the option. You don't have to, but you can still, just because folks have asked this, you can still choose a candidate on the second part of the ballot, because the second part is going to ask you, if the governor loses his job, who should be the replacement? And then there's, as you can see there, number 9, there's 46 people running to replace the governor. There's a whole bunch of different people on there, many of whom I don't know who they are. Actually, most of whom.
Yep. All right. So here's some more points.
Right. So just a couple of points to highlight here, right? One, and there's an updated version of this where all of the information is filled out, because I see number 13 there. I think you might have the draft points, but the one that we have publicly online has the full info there. So check that out for sure. But one of the things to point out here is that, one, just because you get your ballot in the mail doesn't mean you have to vote by mail. You can actually take it in to a voting center or a polling place. Those should be opening up as early as next week, I think, or later, maybe even later this week. I think September 4th is when we can expect the first in-person voting centers to actually, or polling places to actually open. So you can actually take your ballot in if you want to just take it in. And that goes to some of the discussion that we were hearing earlier, right? Yes, we're seeing mail-in ballots happening now, but there will be a lot of people who actually take their ballot in to the polling place or to the voting center. If you want to find out where your polling place or voting center is and when it opens up, what you want to do is actually Google the name of your county, so whatever county you're in, and the words voter registrar or voter center or voting, right? So your county, so if I'm here in Sacramento, it's Sacramento County voter registrar. Just Google that, and what's going to come up, or something like that, and what's going to come up is where you want to go to find out where and when your voting place or a polling center opens up. So a little bit more, right? There are a bunch of folks who probably haven't registered to vote, and I think the deadline to register to vote, if you want to vote by mail, was yesterday. So if you want to vote by mail, you are probably past the deadline right now. However, you can go into, and in most California counties, you can go into a in-person voting center or polling place and register to vote in person, and even vote that same day. Okay, so keep that in mind too. That's in most California counties. I don't think it's in all. So when you Google that, my county voter registrar, that's a question that you can find an answer to there also. And I'm almost positive that you will be able to do that.
All right. Thanks for that, family. Well, let's see
No problem.
Yeah. Let's see one of the candidates who are running in the recall election. His name is Larry Elder. Here we go.
Let me now move to our next witness, is Mr. Elder. Mr. Elder is a conservative attorney, author, and host of the nationally syndicated radio program, The Larry Elder Show. He also writes a nationally syndicated column and produces videos for his YouTube channel in association with the Epoch Times. Mr. Elder received his JD from the University of Michigan and his BA from Brown University. Mr. Elder, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Congresswoman Lee, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. I am the executive producer of a documentary that came out June 19 last year called Uncle Tom, An Oral History of the Black Conservative. And as Congresswoman Lee pointed out, Black people are a race of overcomers. And it talks about the fact that despite all the problems that have been brought up in this committee about racism, about slavery, about Jim Crow, Black people have overcome to the point now where only 20% of Black people are below the federally defined level of poverty. Still too high, but in 1940, that number was 87%. And 20 years later, that number had been reduced to 47%, a 40-point drop in 20 years. That is the greatest 20-year period of economic expansion for the history of Black Americans. And notably, they came before the Brown versus Board of Education decision. They came before the Civil Rights Bills of 1964, 1965. Despite all of this racism, all of this prejudice, Black people still overcame. I also find it ironic we're having this hearing 13 years after we elected and then re-elected the first Black president of the United States. I'm old school. I still get the newspapers thrown to my house. And the day that Obama got elected, I got the New York Times and the LA Times thrown to my home. And on the front pages of both those newspapers, there were colored pictures of Black parents hugging their kids, crying, saying things like, now I can say for the first time truly that if you work hard, you can be anything you want to be. In 1997, Time Magazine and CNN did a broad survey of Black teens and white teens and asked both of them whether or not racism was a major problem in America. And both of them said yes, not too surprisingly. But then Black teens were asked the following question: is racism a big problem, a small problem, or no problem in your own daily life? 89% of Black teens in 1997 said racism was a small problem or no problem in my own daily life. In fact, twice as many Black teens as white teens said failure to take advantage of available opportunities is a bigger problem than racism, end of quote. And that again was 23 years ago before Obama got elected, let alone reelected. Speaking of Obama, 2007, he ran for presidency. His rival for the Democratic side was Hillary Clinton. And on the Republican side, the two primary rivals were John McCain and Mitt Romney. Gallup asked whether or not Americans would not vote for a Black person, referring to Obama, would not vote for a woman, referring to Hillary Clinton, would not vote for a Mormon, referring to Mitt Romney, would not vote for a person as old as John McCain would be, 72 years old. And what Gallup found is 5% of Americans said they would not under any circumstances vote for a Black person. 11% said they would not under any circumstances vote for a female. 24% said they would not vote for a Mormon. 42% said they would not vote for a person who would be 72 years old when he became president, which would have been the case had John McCain been elected. In other words, Obama as a Black person had a smaller barrier than these three white politicians. So having this conversation right now when racism has never been a less significant problem in America, to me is mind-boggling. Right now, Congress is 12% Black, which is roughly the percentage of Blacks in America. In 1964, Martin Luther King gave an interview to the BBC. And he said he was surprised at the changes that have taken place in America in recent years. And he believed that a Black person could become president in 40 years' time, or maybe even less. That's roughly around the time when Obama became president. And Martin Luther King did not say, we will know when we've arrived at the promised land, when there's a Black coach of Notre Dame, which has happened, when there is a Black female who's the president of an Ivy League university, which has happened, when Blacks are mayors of all the major cities in America, which has happened, when Blacks are police chiefs of the major cities in America, when there are superintendents of schools of America or mayors of America, sometimes all three at the same time. He did not say that. He did not say when Black people become millionaires and billionaires, which has happened. He did not say when Black people become CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. He said when a Black person becomes president, that's when we'll know we've reached a point where people are being evaluated based on the content of their character to the extent that it is reasonable to expect. And the idea that slavery built America is belied by the fact that at one time, Virginia was the most populous and wealthiest state in the Union, but within a couple of generations, it had fallen behind states in the North because the South depended upon slavery, which impoverished the South relative to the North, which is primarily why the North won the election. No one could have had, or very few people could have had a life harder than my father. My father was 13 years old, born in 1915. He was kicked out of his house by his mother. Athens, Georgia, Jim Crow, at the beginning of the Great Depression. The man walked down the street, did whatever he could. Ultimately, he became a Pullman porter on the trains, which was the largest private employer of blacks in those days. Traveled all over the world, became a Marine, was one of the first black Marines, a Montford Port Marine. And my dad always told my brothers and me the following: hard work wins. You get out of life what you put into it. You cannot control the outcome, but you are 100% in control of the effort. And before you complain about what other people did to you, go to the nearest mirror and say to yourself, what could I have done to change the outcome? And my dad always told us this: no matter how hard you work, no matter how good you are, sooner or later, bad things will happen to you. How you respond to those bad things will tell your mother and me if we raised a man. And my father always said this about the Democrat Party: they want to give you something for nothing. And when you're trying to get something for nothing, you almost always end up getting nothing for something. Thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Attorney Elder, thank you so very much for your presentation today. Mr. Howard.
Listening to Elder hurts my life.
We lost Chris. He couldn't even take it.
Yeah, he was like, man, I just can't even do this.
Oh.
So yeah, so he's one of the, if not the running lead candidates in this recall election.
He is indeed. And he stated that he's not joining any debates because he's only going to debate Newsom. It's pretty uppity, if you ask me. I feel like the people need to be able to hear from everyone, regardless of how you feel about them. Listening to Elder speak, like I said, really hurts my soul because he, to me, embodies a lot of white supremacy, and it's just
Yeah.
a black face on top of it. Most of the comments
Right.
that he was making, like the bit that he closed out on getting something from nothing. Last I checked, in American history, our people have given their lives, their labor, um, their emotional state. Like, we have given all.
Everything. And it's
Right.
not like he even has any concrete arguments against reparations. It's just that he don't want black people to have them.
He's subscribing to the idea that because people have made it through and black people have been able to succeed in the midst of this overwhelming white supremacist system, that it means any and everyone can do it, right? That it means it's okay. It takes the attention away from the fact that we're existing under a suppressive racist system and puts it on those folks who are those black exceptional folks, rather than addressing the system itself and understanding that the system is what is churning out these conditions that we're living in, the way we're treated, et cetera, et cetera. So it's sort of like a bait and switch. It's like one of those fast talking, I'm going to tell you what's happening, but not actually address the issue. Nothing that he said. I'm so happy that his family has been able to rise up. I'm so happy that they have a like attitude towards life that is like, go get it, go after it. There's nothing wrong with any of that, and then none of the roses should be taken away from his family for being able to exist and survive in this racist system, but to use his anecdotal experience and a few others, because it's not like he's alone, as reason for not supporting reparations does not make sense to me when we have the numbers that says when we look at the racial wealth gap, that says how much money our families, folks who are descendants of American slavery, has to work with, to deal with. And I'm about to get on my soapbox again. Point is, he hurts my life, and I just really want to sit down with him and just like have some whiskey and like really talk to him and share a couple of books with him.
Yeah, we like your soapbox, and welcome back, CO.
You have to consider the messenger too with Elder. He gets a lot of his funding from conservative zaddy. So I mean, everybody's not going to get on here and talk against their lineage, their people, in order to get paid from where his funding sources largely come from. So everybody can't do exactly what he's doing because can't do it.
Our capitalist society, capitalist society isn't designed for everyone to succeed. There has to be a swath of people at the bottom to prop up those at the top. So what he's saying doesn't. I don't know. It's like a carrot, on a stick.
Yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
You bring up a valid point because we watched watching SIP about the welfare system last week, and one of the panelists in the discussion, I don't know if we actually played through the whole discussion, but one of the panelists mentioned that in order for a capitalist system to survive, you have to have people who are on the bottom. So at that time, they were saying, 80% of the population was doing, but you have to have that 20% in order for capitalism to function. So, yeah, as a matter of fact, next week, I think I want to continue this conversation if we can. 'Cause I know we got to wrap it up because it's a little over the hour. And I wanted to actually provide some slides to debunk a lot of what he was saying next week. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And, for the family that didn't show up this week, we'll play a little bit of the clip, but we're not going to play the whole thing just to let people know who Larry Elder is. Larry Elder. So on that note, family, before we break out of here, we just want to give you some updates to the task force. Looks like they're meeting again September 23rd and 24th, October 12th and the 13th, and December 8th and 9th. And Emend, the mass media group, will definitely be in the building streaming all of those. And as usual, family, come through. Whatever your comments are, put them in the chat. I know we've been sending them over I think we have at least, or we're going to send them over to the DOJ, the task force, so they know what you are thinking. And yeah, that's going to be fun in the California sun. It's all right, family. I don't know. Is there anything else that y'all want to comment on before we get out of here?
I'm good. I'm good.
I think that's it. Just make sure you express your right to vote in this upcoming election. Ballots are coming. I did drop the link to the Black Voter Guide for this in the chat. I mean, it's pretty simple. Just vote no, and go.
There you go.
And that's all you really got to worry about. So yeah, with that, I guess we'll take you out here again. Still working on this redistricting work in accordance with the census. Only happens every 10 years. You should look into what your city is doing on redistricting and drawing those lines to make sure that you are fairly represented. All right. So I guess that's it. Papiaki family.